living light, blaze forth now and dance as living flame. Freedom has come, and the bulwarks of God are reinforcing the total aspirations of men. The day of the victory of God is at hand, and peace within the hearts of men shall assert itself and take dominion there, that the wrong actions of mankind may become transmuted by the great power of the swords of living flame, and the consuming elements of the Godhead shall transmute all those conditions which have brought distress to the mind of man. O Holy Spirit of prophecy, O Holy Spirit that has danced before the consciousness of God, O Holy Spirit that floods the souls of men, gushing forth with raptures celestial, O Holy Spirit that magnifieth all that is virtue and truth in men, come now and take dominion in their souls. Let them feel the sacred fire element pulsating within themselves. Let them know that I am nigh, even at the very door. Let them know that the power of the sacred fire does assert its dominion. Let them know that the victory of God rusheth forth with the fullness of his majesty. Let them know that the very stars themselves dance in living flame and conscious awareness of the victory of the name of God, which I am. Let all life then rejoice at the pulse of the Eternal One. Let the rising power of that pulse bring its full magnitude of beauty and victory to the consciousness of mankind. Let them no longer have fear, for fear hath torment. Let them cast out fear, and let the power of God rule within their hearts to still all the vibratory action of fear and torment both. Let mankind cast this aside, and in the peace of Christ's victory realize the possibility of the fulfillment of their soul's longings. I know what it means to have the heart burn within myself as I commune with the victorious spirit of the threefold flame. I know the meaning of the fire that roared on Horeb's height. I know the meaning of the fire which we invoked from the sands of the desert floor as it roared up toward God, the fulfillment of the mighty power of ascension's caravan of light. I know the meaning of transmutation of the atomic structure of the body form. I know the meaning of the victory of light. I know the meaning of all that fulfills the immortal destiny of the soul of man, and that which it contains of the essence of God principle. I know the meaning of the fulfillment of that principle, for I am come this night to fulfill that principle here and now in your midst, by a spiritual action of great light, to make you aware of the fact that I have returned to my flame, that flame to which I have returned is also the flame to which you will return, and the flame to which all men will return, for it is the self-same flame from which all have sprung forth, carrying within the very essence of their being those forgotten fragments of the eternal and essential faith of Archangel Michael, which is able to transmute all human doctrines and credos into the actuality of divine attainment, whereby the soul of man, in its entrancing rapture with the ideas of God, is able to find such an effulgence of life's victory as a cup running over with joy and the transmuting power of his radiance, that the soul of man is lifted up as upon a cloud, and the fire casts its ring round about the cloud, and the cloud is a cloud of witness to mankind. The victory that appeared to the children of Israel long ago, ere they entered the land of promise, appearing then to the consciousness of mankind as the possibility of their own essential victory, which they must have ere they shall be able to ascend as beloved Jesus and others of us who are the ascended host can transmit and transmute unto you as the fullness of your own essential scepter of divine authority, which shall take dominion over those recalcitrant elements of your being which have refused to bow the knee and to acknowledge the power of your own Christ divinity that gives you the fullness of your victory in this day and age and forevermore.
Sacred fire in thy pulsations of cosmic energy that descends now upon all mankind, the power of sustainment, whereby there comes into manifestation the victorious attainment. Oh, 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 oh. Pulsate now with God desire. Let all men feel thy fire and know that I am come to make all one. To make all one is our desire, to fill all with the sacred fire. Tis you. Oh, come forth now and fill the hearts of men with thy light radiance. Be raised, O mankind of earth, into the power of intonation. No mere speculation, but an incalculable scientific accuracy manifests by the power of the word, the holy tones of the priests of the sacred fire. Won't you please be seated? I am come then this night to establish in your consciousness an understanding of the power of the Son behind the sun, that there is within the force field of your individual patterns
a conceptual relationship between perfection and your soul. That is a bond intended to bring about through this contractual relationship a spirit of attainment that refuses to rest short of the goal and the mark, the prize of your victory. Consecration that comes into being because man with God wills it so. Stimuli, stimulate, stimulator, regenerator, O Holy Spirit of truth, stimulate these souls with the consciousness of their essential victory. Be the great stimuli of their hearts. Thou art the stimulator of their aspirations. Do thou this thing now then as an act of transmutation. Blow upon them and raise their energies toward the great matrix consciousness of the Eternal Mother. Let them see that God has projected downward into the womb of matter and substance the Spirit of truth, to raise form and substance into the becoming of all that the Holy Mother holds within her concept, received from on high, the great descending light rays that purify and transmit the impulses of divine grace. As Elijah ascended into heaven in a chariot of fire, so have I beheld, as the mighty light rays of God have transmitted to each cell of my body a portion of the living flame, which flashed forth in the bush before the eyes of Moses, and did not consume it, and yet it roared with the appearance of eternal fire. I have felt this impulse flash through my flesh form. I have felt the quickening power of this sacred fire pulsating in my brain and heart. I have been lifted up until that fire roared through my entire being. I have felt divine union as the sacred fire essence upon which I rode entered the halls of the divine presence to become one with God. For our God is a consuming fire. But precious ones, while I have waxed hot in divine fervor, let me quietly convey to you that God has appointed the bonds of his habitation, that is man's habitation, He hath drawn the lines of confinement, and his law moves according to the impulse of his love as it is released in answer to the calls of mankind. For the call compels the answer. When you hunger for purity as for bread, when you hunger for love as for recognition, when you hunger for peace as for father and mother and friend, and when you can feed full as though you fed your own mouth, you have begun to understand divine law. Consecration. The great circle of God's hallowed love has never been broken, nor will it be broken, for the initiatic spell of divine virtue is the white magic of spirituality, akin to the white stone and sacred fire law. Man cannot trample upon this law with impunity. Man cannot break the tablets of the commandments of God and escape clean. For the causes and cores of man's wrongdoings will always return to the feet of the breaker of the covenant, and he shall redeem to the last farthing the error of his transmittals. For man is a transmitter of the energies of God, and in his higher aspect of Christ's intelligence, he becomes a transformer of the energies of God. He is transformed, resurrected, perfected, and ascended into that flame from whence he came. And as I stand here tonight in your midst, bursting with hope for each of you, I cognize the power of the law to do that which you think you cannot do. I cognize the power of the law in quietude and peace. For in the center of our flame, where abides the holy will of God, there is a great mercy power that flows forth so as not to consume elements of individuality. And so God hath said, as you come within the circle of my hearth, where brightly blazes my being, I ask you to stand at that circular level where you warm yourselves without being consumed. Recall then the ancient days when the 3 Hebrew children stood in the fiery furnace, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and the 4th having the form like unto the Son of God. O sacred fire breath of God, consecrate these souls afresh by the renewal of the ancient covenants of the high priests of God and the priests of Melchizedek. Consecrate men who aspire in purity and truth, without the desire to entertain error, into the great circular bond of righteousness. Draw them from the outer circle to the next within, and to the next within, and to the next within, until they approach closer and closer, without the smell of smoke upon their garments, and without being consumed. Let them understand the law which requires that they shall, through initiatic experience, attain each step of the way, ere they shall be brought into the hidden temples, whose veils hang before their consciousness, awaiting the command of life to raise them let them understand the meaning of patience. And let them be patient with others as with themselves. And in the possessing of their own soul consciousness, let them recognize that the fabric of their soul must be expanded ere they come to the wedding feast without a wedding garment, and be cast into outer darkness where there is gnashing of teeth. And the parable understanding of this ought to be conveyed to all, whereby they understand that they trample not upon their own divinity, for they will all one day face the dweller upon the threshold of their own being. They will recognize their responsibility to face their human creation and utterly destroy it by the power of the sacred fire. And if they insist upon being wedded to mortality and outer mortal substance, they will find that they would be faced with the problem of destroying themselves, which can never be, for the serpent cannot devour his own body. And so man must shed the skins of outer mortality and enter into the spiritual virtue that touches virtue upon virtue and does not attempt to convert virtue into shadow. O great cross of living flame from the heart of Lord Gautama, blaze forth thy majesty here now, and let it be transmitted across the face of the world. Let the world itself feel the sacred fire breath of God that calls to all hearts of mankind everywhere to unite in the bond of essential love and wisdom. The divine philosophia that fills the cup of humanity with the elements of love's sacred fire that transmutes all error and brings man to the point where his cup flows over with the joy of God's victory and the possibilities of the attainment of that victory as a series of small victories, won each day, consummating and culminating in a final victory when all of the atoms of the body, as the morning stars, shall sing together with divine harmonium, accompanied by the angels of the ascension, and the robes of the ascension can be wrapped around mankind as living flame, while the form remains inviolate because it is already wedded to immortal substance, hence has upon itself or is clothed upon with the wedding garment of the Lord. Understand now and have imparted to you, precious ones, the meaning of this essential knowledge for your victory. For though you possess the gold of the world, and though you possess the wisdom of the world, and though you possess the honor of the world, unless you shall have this victory, you shall be as chaff before the whirlwind of the Spirit of God. You shall be cast to the four corners of the earth elements, and you shall be as nothing before the face of God. For all must come to the Spirit where they are something by reason of the sacred fire breath of God, which in its pristine purity originally blazed around about them to create out of the manger consciousness, the matrix consciousness of their own earthly mother, the self-same elements of spiritual power that actually graced their spiritual universal mother in the matrix of pre-Adamic being and Christ being, with all of its victorious accomplishment, which causes the earth itself to blossom as a rose. For even the desert areas of the world shall break forth into singing, and the sacred fire flowers shall appear, and there shall come rejoicing, and the children shall troop forth, carrying in their hands garlands of divine love, and they shall bless the world with the purity of the great immaculate fountain of the Immaculate Conception, and all life shall sing in purity, salvation and honor to the Lord our God. Hosanna, 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 world without end. And life itself shall become all the happiness and beauty and perfection which God himself is. Do this noble act, O mankind, and employ thy energies and being in this service, and so shalt thou come to the house of the Lord and abide therein forever. And you shall go no more out, but you shall come where I am, and you shall recognize the meaning of the great master teacher's words. Where I am, there shall ye be also. And in this conscious state and from this conscious level, I send my love to you forever. You yourselves have the privilege of accepting it or rejecting it. For it has not rejected you in whatsoever state you are presently in, but has laid at your feet the garlands of eternity, the interweavings of the celestial octaves of light with the earth itself, so that heaven and earth may pass away in the great spiritual conflagration, where all rolls up as a scroll, and all comes forth again as a new heaven and a new earth, not in a destructive activity of cataclysmic action, but in a constructive activity of utter devotion to the uttermost farthing which mankind has within the treasure house of his being. For whatsoever you have has first been given unto you by God, and the Lord himself shall require of thy soul this year and all years to come that which thou art ready to pledge upon the altar of life itself. You will choose then this day whom you will serve. You shall choose whom you will stand for. And in choosing, choose wisely and well. And in choosing, realize that you must break mankind's spell upon your soul and be set apart as a city that is set upon a hill that cannot be hid. Be not afraid of the persecutions of mankind. Be not afraid of that which they say against you. For they are only those who have the power temporarily, perhaps, to kill the body. But they cannot separate the soul. They cannot do despite to your immortal spirit. For your dust itself shall be hallowed by the power of God's radiance as it pours through you this new year, to give you a victory unparalleled in all mankind's past experience as you accept it for yourself. I wish to thank you for your solemn attention. I wish to thank you for your consecration of soul. I wish to thank you for your faith that you can be as I am, that you can stand where I stand, that you can inspire mankind in future generations from the same level. For I say unto you, as it has been said of me, thus spake Zarathustra. I thank you in the holy name of the sacred fire of God, which I am. Bid you a silent night of infinite peace. from the sands of the Gobi, from the quietude of our heart, we come this night to once again greet the blessed evolutions of this planet. Our hope is that a continued flow of our peace will so saturate mankind that they will desire to manifest the wonders of our grace. And so from the Gobi, from Shambhala, we come. And it is to the spirit of revelation, celestial, that we dedicate ourselves this night to bring to you an understanding of the reverent word, Gobi. For you know, blessed ones, that semantics are a problem to mankind to the present day. And so the mere spelling of a word is not so important as the actual pronunciation thereof. And so as I speak to you to reveal, choosing to do this rather than conceal, I wish to implore you to see the meaning behind the word Gobi. For in this English language word, as also concealed behind the power of the I am, is the most wondrous concept of identity. Go be. Go referring to man going forth from the heart of the Father, and be referring to man just simply being that which the Father is. Do you see that as man stands on the sandy platform of this great reality, on the broad desert plain, he stands forth doing the Father's will, simply being what the Father is. And in this holy concept of being, the subtle voices of the past with the discords of the past are stilled, and man once again lives in holy innocence. Go be thou all that I am, is then a fiat for this age. In an age when the accent is not so much on being as seeming to be, it is essential that mankind be taught from early childhood not the fruits of hypocrisy, but the fruits of purity. For it is purity which comes before the pure throne of God's grace and draws from his grace the boundless radiance that makes a winner in the world as well as a winner in heaven. For victory comes to the soul of man not through his desire to, as you say, lord it over other men, but as the Lord rules over him once again. As he sees that pain is not the way, and pleasure-giving is indeed that for which we pray, mankind will understand that in the plan there is a mightiness in man which will unfold forevermore the beauties of the eternal shore, and will draw forth into full view the purity of God to do that which is the master plan, the comfort of the God in man. The way is plain, let all men hear. Behold, thy light is ever near. Anchored in thy great God flame, it comes again, awaits thy claim. Precious ones, I come to you then this night to stir within your ancient memory the days of the pilgrims of past history, when men were godly men and were men filled with enthusiasm and the desire to do all the wonderful things which the men of high ideals do to make the world a place more beautiful and comfortable, more noble, more stately and gracious. You see, precious ones, in the symmetry of nature, there is such an unfolding wonder that I sometimes wish that all the youth of the world would understand a little more of the subtleties of inner botany, that they would come to realize that among the plants of the field and the forest there is such a wondrous touch of the hand of God, revealing his celestial love in torrents, pouring down upon the soul that is athirst, and bringing to all such peace that they cannot even do more than just to drink it in, and be content forever to bask in the radiance of that peace. And yet, behold, the word has gone forth, go, be, yea, go, and do thou likewise. To be a godly man, a godly woman, is the requirements of the youth of the world. And they are surrounded by pigmentations of darkness. The mud and the slime from ancient civilizations has covered them over until they cannot reveal the purity that is God. And yet we would strip aside the masks from all, that the courageous ones in this day and age may stand forth and their faces shine as the sun in the Father's kingdom. I am come this night in the stillness of thy being to speak to this planet Earth of the wondrous capabilities that stand before all life here. When the cupidities of mankind and the banalities are bypassed, when mankind are willing to cast their all, as it were, into a common pot, and to draw therefrom the substance for which they need, many of the discordant conditions which now exist would be completely wiped out. And yet I cannot so recommend at this hour, for the lords of karma have so warned that mankind have such a tremendous karmic imbalance that the great law would seem at this moment to require almost aeons of time to pay it off. And yet, by means of the violet transmuting flame, and by the means of cosmic Christ love, drawn forth and expressed by the many, the planetary imbalances may be speedily corrected by the power of the 3 times 3, and the arithmetic powers carried on to almost infinite possibilities, so that the circle comes full square, and the city of God manifests among men as visualized by holy men of old, even by Augustine and by others, of our starry band, whose noble souls flashing across the firmament of the world brought comfort to the era in which they lived, and continues to the present day via the media of the printed word, to establish in the souls of men some remnant of a virtue long past and long forgotten, for which the world presently longs, and so it ought to do. And yet the strength of men derives not from the thoughts and wishes of other men, but from the plan of God. Go, be thou the fullness of all that God would have thee be. And go, do thou the fullness of all that which God would have thee do. Limit not thyself, and yet cast not upon thyself a burden of senseless idealism, which is unapproachable by thy being. Let thy aspirations be within the grasp of thy attainment. Understand well that thou must start first of all from thy cradle stage to creep, and then to rise upon knee, to stand straight upon thy feet. Blessed ones, when you understand the comfort of the divine plan and its unfolding wonder, how that all the love of heaven bursts around about thee as a garden most beautiful, you will realize that the garden of aspirations can become also a thorny one, where mankind feel because they have not attained all that to which they have aspired, that they have fallen short as into an abyss. And it is not so. For a little attainment is better than none at all. And men must derive comfort from small favors derived from the Godhead, that they may expand their light in love still more in the great comfort flame of the Most High God. The love of the ascended hosts is so infinitely powerful, so radiantly beautiful, that it passes by as a high wind over the land, and that which is beneath stirs but a little from this tremendous progression, which sweeping overhead is like a comet, like a new birth, an astronomical nova in the sky and firmament of being. Tender reality revealed to mankind shows them how that kindness expressed and given out is ever an action of cosmic love. When mankind withhold from others their kindness and stand in vengeance upon one another, oh, how they sear the fragments of their soul, how they mar the beauty of the divine plan, how they crack the very vase of being, how the precious flowers are strewn upon the ground and mingled with blood and despair, how all becomes a bitter pill, a potion to swallow that is discomfort and unhappiness, how the world foments and generates war throughout the East and in Africa, how occurs throughout the world the vanities and disillusionments of mankind's false aspirations. Despotism asserts itself under the guise of freedom and democracy and does not stand forth. Here in your nation, America, where I speak tonight, and yet I beam my love from the Teton area to Washington, D.C., and I am also speaking at the same time, simultaneously as it were, from Shambhala in the Gobi Desert. Do you see then how wondrous it is to occupy our octave? I am here one moment and I am there the next. First I am in the Tetons, then I am with you in Washington, then I am in the Gobi, so that by a spiritual triangulation I cast the banner of Shambhala over the world. And the world is flooded with our love, and our compassion glows tonight with a fervor that has never been known in any past age. And yet this age is scarcely ready to receive the fiery aspects of our love. For you have some concept about me that I am a being of cosmic peace, and so I am. Do you not know that I have a fervor so great that I must veil that fervor behind the softness and gentleness of my spirit, else mankind would scarce be able to stand up to that which I have? Do you know, precious ones, and I understand that you will know that I am not boasting, that the fervor and fire of my soul is deemed to be even greater than Moria? Do you know, precious ones, that the flashing forth of my life that is cloaked in the gentleness of peace is indeed embodying qualities of the first ray, which if I dared to release them would cause the world itself to tremble? I say this not in memory or in honor of my own being, but I say it in honor of the office which I hold, which beloved Moria would gladly attest to, as all the hosts of heaven. For our office, cloaked in peace, is also filled with the energies of God to the overflowing, which energies can stimulate the soul of man till he has such soul knowing and strength of being that he can pursue his seeing into the inner spheres and wax hot in the destiny of God that passes beyond the years and brings no fright to those men of courage who will realize that the epochs of the night must be bypassed, and they must stand as lions to overcome all of the darkness and shadow and substance which they have misqualified in their bestial natures, and put upon themselves the power of the Lamb of God that taketh away the stains and sins of the world. Precious ones, as I speak to you tonight, I am now transferring my consciousness to the great altar in the Grand Teton, where the glorious songs are ringing forth in praise to God. The mighty holy Kumaras are also descending from Venus, and there is a wondrous glow that illumines the Teton area, so that all around the mountains, the holiness as once at Horeb's height shines forth its beams all over America, streaming forth to the nation's capital and to the far west, the wondrous power of light rays to unite and encourage men in hopes of overcoming pain, darkness, sin, and stain. You see, precious ones, the battle of Armageddon is at hand, and so we await now the moment when the powers from on high shall descend to us the thought form for this year, this current year now begun. And I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the old earth and heaven was passed away, and there was no more sea. Behold, precious ones, the new heaven is at hand, and the new earth is at hand. The newness of heaven is the renewal of the Christ mind in man. The newness of earth is the new civilization emerging because of the inflow of the Christ mind. And the no more sea refers to the stilling of man's banal emotions and the acceptance of God-controlled peace in the hearts of men. And now, behold, I see a golden scroll descending from God out of heaven, and upon it there is one word, and the word is peace. And this is also written in gold. And now the hand of an angel adds two very small words beneath: with honor. And I see the cosmic honor flame of God blazing from afar, as a candle in the dark that passes through the universe and causes life to start, to regenerate, to purify, to be all that He is, and all that I am, and all that you are, in the great divine reality of your being. O precious ones, why will ye forget celestial magnitudes in banalities and crudities of human reason? Why will you not shed now the dust of the centuries of oppression, when you have covered your souls with the slime from the mud-baked plains? Why will you be empty vessels when you can be full? Receive then today the staff of the pilgrim. For as I am speaking to you and seeing this beauteous scroll thought form with the word peace, with honor, I am reminded of the search of the pilgrims in past ages. I am reminded of these holy men and of how they walked in an era when no modern increment of civilization was there, of how they walked in an era without the wondrous magic of the lamps of modernity, when they walked in an era when the heat was provided by the log from the forest, and from the peat from bogs, and from various sources of flame, far different than you now employ. I am reminded of how they prepared their food with great difficulty, and of how the growing without modern instruments was accomplished by the nature divas and builders of form, and yet harvested with considerable difficulty. I am reminded of the difficulties of transportation and communication. And I am reminded now of how these pilgrims suffered great privation and hardship in a time when your modern science of medicine, not endowed by Hilarion and his band, was unable to minister to their pains, and of how without the benefit of modern morphine and drugs and serums, mankind did suffer the full-blown agony of their creations. I call to you then to remember that these pilgrims sought in the long ago, with staff in hand, to walk across the face of the years and to peer upon the face of eternity. Their courage, rather than grow dim, became more magnificent with the passing of the years, and many of them became seers of God, prophets and holy men, who walked the earth and brought the comfort flame and the flame of peace to hearts that were sad and lonely. And now today, as I speak to you, in this great age, when you are endowed with so many wondrous blessings, I trust that all of you will give thanks to God for these material things, but will not pin your faith upon them as the ultimate, seeing them only as a means to afford your precious beings time to find God in his eternity, in time, to chime with the ring of celestial immortality. Time to find God with the passing of the years. Time to cast out all your fears. Time to be the essence of peace. I say to you now, in the name of the brotherhood that is with me, go, be. Peace. Pax vobiscum. Sancti, sancti, sancti harmonium. I thank you and bid you good night. Precious ladies and gentlemen, as I contemplate the curious and odd bits of mankind's memory and recognize that they are but fragments of that which is the memory of God, I am impulsed to call to your attention how that in the so-called dying unto external individualization and living in the reality of the immortal presence, mankind come alive and have the blessings of the great cosmic cornucopia for their own advantage and for the good of universal grace, that grace might be multiplied and that peace might abound everywhere. I come to you this night aware of the fact that there is a great deal of necessary knowledge that must be imparted to mankind in order for them to successfully wage the battle of life and emerge victorious from the mass confusion and the battle of the senses, to understand the meaning of Christ's victory and the power that overcomes death and all outer conditions. Now the celestial love of heaven, penetrating your flesh forms, brings to your awareness the immediate presence of life, the immediate presence of God, the enfolding effulgence of His radiance that passes through your heart's door and brings comfort and power and beauty to your entire being. For the very fabric of God's own being is imparted to you with the descent of His light radiance. And it is the qualification of this light radiance that causes you to emerge from the hordes and masses so completely enveloped in a veil of misqualified energy that they can scarcely go about their own business, let alone contemplate their Heavenly Father's business. I say to you all then that the old consciousness that enveloped the Atlantean laggards and other individuals who were not willing to offer themselves as a living sacrifice for the manifestation of Christ's omnipotence does indeed today deter mankind from manifesting the radiance of the Father's faith. Now, as you gaze upon the consciousness of mankind, upon the street corners of life, you will find that there are few that reflect the blessedness of hope, that there are few that are aware of the peace and the victory of life which God intends to convey to all. And this is most undesirable to the deity as well as to those guardian presences entrusted with the manifestation of the hierarchical plan for the sake of all upon earth, that they might in the course of time find the fullness of their overcoming victory and their own realization of that which civilization ought to manifest, so that as an integral part thereof they might first of all manifest the expectations of heaven for themselves, that they by the power of example might also bring to others the blessedness of God that ought never to wane. Now I call to your attention that mankind frequently make many false starts, and they have an enormous impetus of righteousness in their feeling world, insomuch so that they aspire to be saints. But when the time comes that they are required to pass the first tests, they so frequently become shrinking violets, withdrawing, as it were, from the very simplest little offerings on behalf of the great ascended master plan and ideals. If they were able to see clearly through the screen of their own ego, rather than through a glass darkly, they would recognize that when these tests come to them, it is definitely a fact that they have failed to master the tests, but rather are mastered by them. I call to your attention then that each time a test is brought to an individual and they fail to master that test, that they themselves are required by the great law to make some form of spiritual inner invocation to the Godhead in order for another test and opportunity to be offered unto them. For indeed, it is a fact that the universe itself, with all of its perfectionment and grace, will not interfere one whit with the free will of man and with his own steady, plodding gait, if he is content to continue in a very meandering way to find his path back to the Godhead, then so be it. I say to you all then that it is necessary that you gird up the strands of consciousness which are your own and recognize that you have a very definite responsibility, blessed ones, to fortify yourselves against the spirit of lethargy, a spirit of indifference, a spirit of contentment even, which keeps you content with outer conditions when it would almost be better if you were a little disturbed. I call to your attention also that beloved Jesus said, I am come to send a sword on earth as well as peace. And so mankind must recognize that there is a true spirit of peace which ought to be the forte of every man. But there is also a false state of peace where individuals cry out saying, we have peace and safety, and then the sudden destruction of their own unregenerate energies come to the gateway of their being and pound for admission as though they were hounds of darkness and fiends determined to exact their very last pound of flesh from those individuals who have for so long ignored the law of Christ's good toward themselves as well as toward their fellow men. Now, in past ages, when individuals came here to Luxor and desired to have admission to our temple, we gave to them very specific and difficult tests prior to their admittance. Today, because of the great leniency of the law, many individuals have been permitted, for example, to enter into the outer courts of our temple with exceeding rejoicing, only to find that they have not been able to recognize the manifestation of cosmic grace and purity, or to recognize, for that matter, that anything specifically good was being released at all. This great misfortune, then, that comes to them brings them face to face with the great law. And so at times the great lords of karma have contemplated as to whether or not they ought to withdraw the privilege from mankind of being able to enter into communion with us and to hear our addresses in the manner which you are now hearing them. However, for the sake of the sincere devotees of truth, and for the great cosmic energy patterns which are released from pole to pole as we radiate out our love to the world, we feel that it is justified somewhat for the sake of the many that we do release to mankind in this manner and in this day for the perfection of those individuals who can recognize it and ignore the possibilities for unrighteousness in those who ignorantly choose to express elements of negation in their consciousness. Now, blessed ones, you do not know the fiber and the sense of cosmic victory, which is the grace of every ascended being. The descent of cosmic grace into our heart is the very substance of the Godhead itself, and it has caused us to have a mind that is almost like steel in a sense. For behold, I tell you that if mankind were able to enter in to the qualities that we have and to see them as they really are, they would realize that we are almost fierce in our great determination to manifest for mankind upon this planet the very essential elements which they lack and seem wholly unaware of, whereas they ought to be aware of them, for their own poets and priests and kings and prophets have down through the centuries made these known to them in part. The glory of the old civilizations was very great, and the glory of this one can be. But ladies and gentlemen, so much depends upon the individual that we say to all of you, each one per se, awake to the knocking at the door of your being. Recognize that this persistent application of the deity through the avenue of the Holy Spirit is the voice of God in the very paradise of man's being, beckoning mankind on to an awareness that will take him afar from mortal fields and concepts into great stellar dimensions where the magnitude of the cosmic light becomes such an essential reality that all that is here will by contrast and relativity seem to be but naught. And then mankind will be face to face with the spirit of cosmic test, whereby they must then determine as to whether or not they will continue to make application to the outer laws of their being and perform with diligence and alacrity those essential tasks which are necessary for the continuation of civilization. For it would be a most unfortunate thing indeed, blessed ones, if mankind by reason of spirituality were to shirk mortal responsibility and refuse in any way to carry on the necessary task for the fulfillment of the planetary scheme and the great unfolding of man's individual destiny. Would it not, I ask you, precious ones, realize then that the power of the Godhead is always wise, not only in a cosmic way, but in a very special individual way, whereby the soul of each individual receives a very special Eucharist from the hand of God, which is specifically charged with a light radiance which the body of that individual and the brain of that individual and the very being of that individual requires at that specific moment. This is a part of cosmic wisdom, for the body of God imparts to each part thereof the specific qualification which the moment requires, and this great wisdom and wisdom's flame, which so lovingly bestows care upon the creature, as it were, also calls to the creature to recognize the great transcendent spiritual power within himself, whereby he can bestow on others the very spiritual qualities which they require, acting as an emissary of the Godhead when in contact with other individuals, and often frequently without himself or herself being outwardly aware of the power that they are conveying to others through their own spiritual action from the inner planes of being. Now I do not expect that the fullness of that which I hereby reveal shall be known to you all at once, for meditation upon our words is frequently required in order that the thought forms and matrices of the past may be broken and new ideas and concepts be assimilated by the spiritually progressive body of our servers upon the planet. who, in expressing the fruits of godliness, are also carrying out the advent of the golden age, and that advent into the field of the present era, so that mankind in the future, looking back upon this generation, will see that they were light bearers of great power, because they overcome the senseless hordes of darkness and the vigilant forces of evil, who were intent upon defrauding mankind, consciously in many cases, of their spiritual birthright. Now then, I say, in the holy name of God, for the sake of the hierarchy, and for the sake of your individual souls, be at least equally vigilant, if not more so, that you may carry to fruition the divine plan here and now, and be in the vanguard of light's perfection, so that the recording ones may make their mark upon your own record individually, and record there an action of starry light radiance for and on behalf of the emerging powers of light. It is easy, blessed ones, for you to open your eyes and see the tremendous weight of human discord and oppression, which mankind, through a spirit of disharmony and disunity, have actually fostered in this civilization. The commercial aspects of the world are like unto Babylon of old, and the merchants in this day and age, who have not practiced divine principles, have actually sacked this generation and are continuing to do so of their material substance, causing the individuals to find a great uneven distribution of material wealth as well as spiritual wealth. For I think it is a recognized and well-known fact that when individuals are so engrossed in the business of earning a living physically, they are often not able to give quite enough time to the perfection of their souls and the nourishment of those hungry individuals upon this planet who long to understand spiritual laws with their intense power and great requirements. I call to your attention that the spiritual laws have great requirements. Now, at first you may say to me, what do you mean by that, beloved Serapis? I call to your attention, blessed ones, that the requirements of spiritual law are to determine the essential complexities of that law, so that you will not be involved simply in the simple, as it were, but will also partake of those complex manifestations of the law that will give you your freedom. You see, mankind is capable of so much more than those specific, externalized manifestations which he has brought forth to the present hour. Let us take the field of music, for example, blessed ones. Do you think for 1 minute that musicians in this world have externalized all of the celestial melodies which they possibly can, and are now scraping the bottom of the barrel of the melodies of heaven? I tell you, nay, for they have not even scratched the surface. They have not even penetrated to 1/1,000,000th of a part of the celestial melodies of heaven. It is almost as though these melodies were infinite, and the exquisite patterns that are yet to be revealed are so marvelous that I actually rejoice tonight and am filled with spiritual glory in contemplation of the happiness which you yourselves will receive when these melodies finally find their way into the hearts of the world and are played by the orchestras thereof and fill the great halls of the world with the celestial sounds of cosmic revelry. Now, blessed ones, you perhaps have thought that we are most somber gentlemen, that we do not ever smile. But I tell you that there is never heard on earth such laughter as there is heard in heaven. There is never heard on earth such rejoicing as is heard in heaven. There is never heard within the human heart, weighted down by discord, the great joy that the angelic host externalize, the almost infinite possibilities and subtle nuances of thought and feeling, which are our forte and also yours. And here's the pity. As St. Germain said in his Shakespearean release, aye, there's the rub. For mankind are so frequently busied about rubbing the lamp of Aladdin, seeking to find material riches and some form of fruit for their ego, that they do not realize the great dawning power of spirituality which is constantly descending upon them, which they can have for a little humility and willingness to serve the law, whereas as it is now, they are whiling away their energy seeking to have recognition from mankind who do not even count, and bypassing the ascended masters who do, and the great cosmic beings and the emissaries of heaven. Whereas if they would pay attention to the messages that come from on high, when they are charged with the essential elements of light, they would then find their freedom in that speedily. Do you see, blessed ones, just how this works out? Well, I think you do in part, and I think as you contemplate my message and take it into your heart in a greater degree, you will recognize the possibilities in your own specific cases whereby you can find a little more freedom in the coming year than you have had in the past. And with this hope for all, I take my leave of you, reminding you that the great tests that are to come will be for the invocation of a purity yet unborn, and a realization that in the words of the Master Jesus, greater things shall ye do, for I go unto my Father. I thank you, and in the name of the Brotherhood at Luxor, I bid you adieu.
My love,
stretches across the centuries and into the heart of men and women in this 20th century. My hands are not shortened, but are extended, and the fervor of heaven for mankind has increased with the dawning of the years, until there are but few in the octave of earth that are able to know and to feel this great increase, for the simple reason that the generations of this planet have continually turned their heart toward evil and the implications thereof, and have not recognized the turning of their attention into wrong channels. They have not recognized or realized that the way of peace has not been known unto them. They have forgotten, if they ever knew, the great radiance of the inner spheres. And I say this, for some of them do behave as though they had never known, and that within them, which is the God within them, who knoweth all things, the Christ radiance that in the beginning was one with the Father, and is now and ever shall be, did know, of course, and fully realized by the power of the Godhead, all the beauty and perfection of inner levels. But mankind today have tread upon these matters quite lightly. They have wandered away as sheep without a shepherd, and yet the hands of heaven are at the door of the hearts of men, seeking to illumine them and to bring them the soft, gentle radiance that is so perfect and pure, whose holy strands from the beginning reach out to this present hour and know no limitations in so far as the future is concerned, but can expand the gift of God out of the timeless reaches into the octaves of mortality as mankind open the door and permit the penetration of this holy substance into the force field of their own mediatorship. For in a truth, the gift of the Christ self was made to all, that all might become self-mediators of the immortal substance of divine grace. From the scientific approach, man can understand by the heat of the fire that the physical form cannot pass too close to the living flame ere it crumble into ash. But those who are able, by an understanding of the affinities of the inner laws, to draw upon the power of heaven, and by divine consonance to raise the vibratory action of the physical atoms as well as other components of their four lower bodies, are able to ascend their consciousness to a vibratory rate where the scientific understanding can be conveyed to you all, that self-same identifying substance, bone of bone, flesh of flesh, life of life, that is the substance of the internal atoms themselves, the sacred fire, does hold the key whereby mankind can raise the outer shell to a vibratory rate in conformity to the inner, so that even the physical flame would not bode harm for him. However, this experiment performed by the uninitiated or those lacking in faith could indeed result in damage to the physical tissue and structure of the body, as well ye know. Yet as I come to you tonight, not to bring forth a dawn of the spectacular into your consciousness, or to further feed the yawning gap of mankind's perennial curiosity, I come to remind you of the great supernal cords of divine love, strands of holy substance borne earthward by angelic ministrants and visitors from celestial realms to your own. I come to tell you that communion with God is a scientific fact, for many can attest to the great power and reality drawn from the records of their own life of this wonderful communicative gift which God has devised in the beginning, even as the nerve network of your physical body does convey through sensory process physical pain to your brain and consciousness, so the great spiritual joys are conveyed through the great cosmic reaches of space by the mighty light rays, which are in effect and in reality the great reality of the nerve network of the physical body of man. For man, the microcosm, is in truth below as is above, in the similitude of God good. As I come to you this night then, drawing you very close into my spiritual embrace, I remind you how that many do wander in concept from the path of truth and righteousness. Those who seek to serve the holy cause do frequently, without realizing it, wander in thought and the impetuous act to follow after man's outer concepts and ways, and thus are enmeshed in travesty and travail, whereby the karmic law exacts its toll. The great avatars and spiritual lights of the body celestial, the great white brotherhood, in their pure spiritual love for mankind, do lament that this be so, but as a wise parent do recognize that mankind must be self-taught in many cases ere they come to a realization of the vanities of the outer world and the lack of satisfaction to their souls by the outer world adornments and methods. I say to you all then, that the spiritual star, which did splendidly shine into the physical octave to presage my birth, is in actuality focused in every man and woman and child, embryonic, yea, but holding forth in all a method whereby they may focus upon the great cosmic doorway of our spiritual unity. That in every body and every being, there is a method of God seeing, whereby men, through purity of heart, may see God in themselves and others, and find that the power of light, engendered by such immaculate concept, will raise them to undreamt of heights, whereby they too will partake of that communion table of God, the immortal table of the Lord, apart from time and space and dimension. A place, yea, veritably I say unto you, a place of attainment, where the wise of all generations do come to sit at God's table. Long have mankind partaken of the crumbs thereof, and in weariness of soul and soul thirst they have cried out to the great light for hope and for eternal substance. Yet I say unto you this night, the substance has always been at the very door, and they knew it not. Therefore I say unto you in this day, there be many who know me not, although I am come into the dimensions of earth, and although I am come again to the hearts of those seeking for the revelation of themselves, the great reality of their life, and the abundance thereof, they know not how that I am nigh, even at the very door. They are befogged and clouded with mortal concepts, and the strength of God is not in the bending bow of their mind or heart, and the arrows they send forth spring forth as weak and puny saplings, and fall at their feet, far from the aspirations of their mind and being. I am come then to keep a torch blazing upon the planet and in the hearts of its people. I am come to strengthen those who are lacking in courage and faith. I am come to invoke the presence of Archangel Michael. I am come to bring his great substance of immortal faith into the consciousness of men upon this planet. And I am come, born by the great love that caused me long ago to offer myself to God as the Christ of Galilee. Hear now then these words, O mankind, for a warning does not always sound forth, but a voice, as John the Baptist crying in the wilderness, has not always been heard. And mankind today have lacked in the quality of perception to recognize our calls and our assistance when it was offered. Yet we continue to offer our assistance, and we shall do so continuously and periodically and continually and constantly at interlevels. We shall do so continuously in outer manifestation, for we shall not always come by phenomena, nor shall men always be able to detect our presence. Yet by faith they must know that we are there. But the fact remains that we are continually offering ourselves to God without ceasing. for and on behalf of the evolutions of this thankless generation. For in the main, they do not recognize the great power that comes from on high, nor do they recognize the power of the wind and the power of the elementals, nor do they recognize the power of their own physical heart to sustain the action of their forms. They know in part, and they recognize in part, and the few wait for the manifestation of God's intense love and wisdom. Yet holy strands have descended and have become anchored within their form and consciousness. It is to the strengthening of these bonds and bands of love that I am come this night to dedicate anew the body of God upon this planet to the holy cause of immortal freedom. You cannot know, mankind of earth, the meaning of your strength united, or you would be less inclined to be so divisive, to be so divided, and so quick to sunder yourselves from one another on the slightest provocation. I tell you, beloved ones, that mankind's judgment of one another is an awesome thing to contemplate from inner levels. For almost with a wave of the hand, they are willing to dismiss old friendships for the slightest cause. Mankind do not yet have the reins of authority acting in their world that enable them to see clearly, and therefore in trepidation and fear they sometimes act, while from honest motives, most impetuously. We are not come to condemn mankind, but to point out these errors, that we might see men arise out of the vicissitudes and shadows of their world into the full-blown radiance of the Christ in manifestation, so that the great purity of God and the purity of the holy angels might come to all, that the clarion call that was spoken by Gabriel unto Mary could be spoken to many, and that the Christ in all could be reborn, revitalized, and revivified as God in action here. I can imagine no greater bestowal than the full complement of divine authority offered and accepted, and then, as though each soul were making a new beginning each moment, if past errors forgotten, all would press on to the great prize that is ahead. All would recognize the immortal substance of God's hand freshly dispensed to them daily. All would hear the voice of God ringing out with tones of immortal love within their hearts and minds hour by hour. All would feel the great power of that love to sweep away the despotism of mankind's own self-created tyranny. All would know that heaven waits for the fulfillment of the immortal contract of light, made with light in the fullness of knowledge, whereby the descending one proclaimed to the very heart of God, Lo, I am descending to do thy holy will. And so the soul of God went down into mortal form and became surrounded by that which is not light. And the substance of God became identified with the substance of Satan. And the substance of God became identified with the evil symbols. and mankind knew God no longer, and the paradise of God was vanished from their thought. And in this vanity of darkness, there was no spiritual light until the great star of the universal Christ came forth, the rays of pure hope appearing then to the simple shepherd consciousness, did awaken responses in the hearts of the humble, for he hath brought down the mighty from their seats, and hath exalted them of low degree. And so the great Magnificat of Mary, in its full radiant perfection, brings forth anew a response from the hearts of those few who can accept their own Christ responsibility in this age and feel the heart call of those who are unafraid to face life at its greatest epoch, the moment when the soul is touched by the Paraclete from on high, when the holy energies rush in that have descended from the sky, flames from the altar, purifying flames, raising all in the name of heaven to the great hall of spiritual fame, where man can together in a common humility at a common table say, I will commune at thy supper, O God, where kings and captains of the earth shall eat now the very body of God's immortal substance, not the flesh of one another, but the flesh of the Son of God, the Eucharist, the immortal Word in action here. The mystery of the Incarnation, the mystery of embodiment, the mystery of being, the mystery of life, then all explained in the concept of the pure in heart shall see God. In this flaming concept, I say to all, be at peace. Peace. Be still. Let not your hearts be troubled or afraid. As spiritual power flows forth, do not be afraid that that power will consume you. It will only renovate your being. It will give you grace and stature. It will lift you up to those high planes from whence you came. It will restore you to the altar of heaven and to oneness and to peace. Forget the vanity then of the world that seeks to preserve your identity that is already lost. For you have a lost identity in the halls of memory. The halls of memory are cluttered with bric-a-brac and effluvia almost without number. And the merciful penetration of the violet flame like a blowtorch takes from you from time to time some of that substance misqualified. And then again, you come to awareness of your old and holy concept from the past, from the beginning. And you see the virtue of that which is also but a beginning. And yet it is the end of the domain of the earth earthly. It is the end of Adam, and it is the beginning of Christ. It is the affirmation of the immortal covenant of the old priesthood of Melchizedek, to which I belong. It is the affirmation of all that is godly. It is the affirmation of strength. It is the affirmation of that which can never be denied. For there are none that have the strength or the wisdom to deny it. For who shall deny thee, O God? Or who shall deny thy holy name, I am? Who shall deny thy flame? And who shall have power over all ages, to stretch as a rainbow thy substance from beginning unto beginning, and then come full circle, both in the land of light and in the house of darkness, to take possession of all, those above in liberation, and those below in bondage. For I have also descended into Sheol, and I have gone down into the bowels of the earth. And lo, I have ascended on high, and lo, I am with you always, even unto the end of the age, and the beginning of eternity's epochs without end. I thank you, and I bid you a holy Christmas greeting on this day in 1964, when the consciousness of God remains at the door. I thank you.